Welcome to Module 6, Seed Mix Design. In this module, you will learn what a seed mix is and why they're so important to the Virginia Pollinator-Smart solar program. You'll also learn what factors are considered when designing a seed mix, what the specific requirements of the program are, and what the best practices for obtaining seed mixes are. What is a seed mix? Why are seed mixes so important? The ultimate goal of this program is to create self-sustaining and high-quality pollinator landscapes that require minimal maintenance in the long term. As they establish, these types of landscapes become stable and resilient to disturbances like pressure from invasive species or extreme climate events. A well-designed seed mix kickstarts this process. A seed mix is defined as an intentionally created combination of seeds from two or more species. By carefully selecting the species that go into your seed mix to reflect the types of habitat you're looking to build, you're setting the baseline for which you can measure the success of your site. Seed mixes are the foundations of future ecosystems because they are the tool with which you craft your desired plant community. Your seed mix not only determines how your site starts, but it also defines the way that it changes over time. Seed mix considerations. There are many factors that should be considered when designing a seed mix. There are environmental factors such as physiological considerations, which include soil conditions and pH, light and moisture regimes on site, and whether the species in the mix are regionally appropriate. Functional overlap also needs to be factored in order to make sure the seed mix is successful. This means intentionally including multiple species that grow in the same habitats, have the same durations, and have the same phenologies in your mix. Species richness, like functional overlap, ensures the success of a seed mix. Pollinator-specific selections can also be considered, such as choosing to include specific host plants for butterflies or plants that provide habitat. On the other side of the coin, there are logistical factors that need to be considered. Are your proposed species commercially available? What is the panel height within the solar array, and does that conflict with the height of the seed mix? And finally, is the mix cost effective? Digging deeper into the environmental considerations, what are the soil conditions on site? Are the soils acidic, basic, or neutral? Will they require soil amendments in order to allow the seed mix to establish well? When we talk about light regime, we mean whether the plants will grow in full sun, part sun, or full shade. At solar facilities, you may encounter multiple light regimes. For example, plants may grow in full sun outside of the solar rays, but may grow in full shade underneath the panels. If you have a site with full sun, make sure to select species that grow naturally in full sun, and vice versa. The moisture regime of the site is also important. Is it xeric dry, mesic, or wet? And will these conditions be the same after construction? A seed mix designed for wet habitats will have a different suite of species than a seed mix designed for dry habitat. Finally, are the species within your mix regionally appropriate? Native species that grow in the region of your solar facility are already adapted to tolerate the environmental conditions of the area, including temperature fluctuations and drought and rain tolerances. Additionally, native species to the area have co-evolved with the native pollinators of the area, ensuring that the seed mix will provide habitat for these species. Functional overlap ensures that the seed mix is stable and that species from the mix will grow in all areas of the site. For each habitat on site, multiple species that grow under those conditions should be included in the seed mix. There should also be a diversity of graminoids, including cool season grasses, warm season grasses, sedges, and rushes and forbs, both legumes and otherwise. Multiple species of each functional group should be included in the mix. Species with both annual and perennial duration should be selected in the mix. Additionally, the seed mix should include species that flower in the spring, early summer, later summer, and fall. Multiple species for each season should be selected for the mix. Functional overlap may seem like a strange concept when designing a seed mix, but remember that these mixes should attempt to mimic the natural meadow habitat that you hope to see in the future. Meadows have a diversity of species that fall into the aforementioned categories, and therefore, so should your seed mix. Species richness, like functional overlap, ensures that enough species are provided in the seed mix to establish and become self-sustaining over time. Pollinator-specific selections can be chosen for seed mixes as well. For example, different host plants for target pollinator species could be selected, or plants that provide habitat such as bunch grasses and species with hollow stems. There are several logistical factors that need to be considered when designing a seed mix. The first is commercial availability. Can you buy it? Your seed mix needs to be composed of species that you can purchase on the open market. Not all native species are commercially available. Therefore, this will select the pool of species that you have to choose from when you're designing your seed mix. Also consider your panel height. Is it greater or less than 36 inches from the bottom of the array to the ground? This can influence the types of species that are chosen for the mix because you don't want the vegetation to overtop the panels and conflict with the point of the array. And finally, cost effectiveness. Is the seed cost effective or is it too expensive and will it break the budget of the site? Requirements of seed mixes within the Virginia Pollinator-Smart Solar Program. The requirements of the Virginia Pollinator-Smart Solar Program are dictated by the scorecards, which are covered in a different module. I've taken 5 questions from version A scorecard, the proposed or retrofit scorecard, that deal with seed mixes. These questions outline the criteria that we're looking for when designing a seed mix for this program. These questions are clumped into 2 categories, the panel zone and the open area. Questions 3, 4, and 5 deal with the open area. Question 3 in particular discusses the use of a Virginia Pollinator-Smart seed mix that's developed using the Solar Site Native Plant Finder. The Native Plant Finder is covered in another module, but the Virginia Pollinator-Smart seed mix does have a definition. It's a mix of seeds composed of species found on the Solar Native Plant Finder that meet the following requirements: 3 or more grass species, 20 or more species total, and at least 3 species in flower during all 4 time periods, which are the spring, early summer, late summer, and fall. When available, Virginia local ecotypes are used in the seed mix. The reason we've designed the Virginia Pollinator-Smart Solar Seed Mix as such is because in the open area, which is the only area where this seed mix requirement appears, there are typically fewer site constraints. So we really want to encourage you to maximize your use of this area for high quality pollinator habitat. Question 3 on this scorecard deals with the amount of acreage that you're planning to plant with that seed mix. Question 4 deals with the total number of native species in your mix. And question 5 deals with the number of seasons with at least 3 Solar Site Native Plant Finder species in flower. As you can tell, these questions follow closely the principles of seed mix design, particularly functional overlap and physiological constraints that we discussed earlier in this module. We kind of skipped over questions 1 and 2 in order to start with the open area, but let's move back to the panel zone. Now the panel zone has more site constraints than the open area, specifically panel height and the presence of the arrays themselves. Because of that, we want to be a little bit more flexible in the types of seed mixes that can be used in this area to make sure that they're both environmentally and logistically compatible with your facility. So in the panel zone, the seed mix does not have to be Virginia Pollinator-Smart. However, your seed mix can still count as mostly native if the top 3 dominant species in the seed mix and the majority of the species in the seed mix can be found on the Solar Site Native Plant Finder. Although it would be ideal to have a Virginia Pollinator solar seed mix, not every seed mix is going to contain only native species that meet those requirements. Question 1 on the scorecard deals with the acreage to be planted within the panel zone with this type of mix. The second question relating to the panel zone asks about the diversity of native grass species. This question is specifically provided to encourage functional diversity and overlap, a principle we discussed earlier in this module. Best practices for obtaining seed mixes. When obtaining seed mixes, defer to the qualified professional and start planning as early as possible. The seed supplier will need to know some important information, which I've outlined below. When, both the year and the season, are you planning to plant the site? Where is the site located? What is the minimum distance between the ground and the bottom of the solar panels? Are the panels fixed or tracking? What is the soil texture of the site? And what is the soil pH, and will it change during construction? As in, will you be adding soil amendments? The seed supplier will also need to know what the hydrology of the site is. Is it well-drained, mesic, chronically saturated, or a combination of conditions? Which of the following areas are you planting? Within the array buffer, the screening area, or stormwater areas? And what is the acreage of each? What is the end goal of the project? In this case, it's to create high-quality pollinator landscapes at a solar facility following the guidelines of the Virginia Pollinator-Smart solar program. What guidelines must the seed supplier follow? Provide the supplier a link to the Pollinator-Smart solar program and specify whether you're looking for a Virginia Pollinator-Smart seed mix or whether you're aiming for a certain number of grasses or aiming for the seed mix to be native dominant. They'll also need to know if vegetation goals differ in the stormwater, panel zone, open area, and screening area. If so, be clear that multiple seed mixes are needed. What is the vegetation already present on site, and what invasive species are present in the surrounding landscape? Once the seed supplier has designed a mix, check it. Use the worksheets in the comprehensive manual to help you determine how many points these potential seed mixes will give you on the scorecard. If you're aiming for a Virginia Pollinator-Smart solar seed mix, this is a great way to check that the mix that you've received actually meets those conditions. If, after checking your mixes, they don't meet the scorecard requirements, I suggest the following actions. First, there will always be back and forth with seed mix suppliers, and they're here to help. So discuss your concerns with them first and allow them the opportunity to modify the seed mixes based on your needs. If that doesn't work, you can always reach out to the Pollinator-Smart team at pollinator.smart@dcr.virginia.gov. We're here to help, and we can work with you to help troubleshoot any issues or answer any questions. Once you're happy with your seed mixes, order as early as you possibly can. This will help ensure that there's stock available for your request, and sometimes there are even cost savings. In this module, you should have learned what a seed mix is and why it's so important to the Virginia Pollinator-Smart solar program. You've also learned what factors are considered when designing a mix and what the specific requirements of the Virginia Pollinator-Smart solar program are. Finally, you learned what the best practices are for obtaining seed mixes. If you have any questions for us, feel free to reach out at pollinator.smart@dcr.virginia.gov. We'll see you in the next module.